Oomen, qui nous fait le très grand plaisir de venir des Pays-Bas, de Middelburg, qui est la doyenne du University College Roosevelt, qui fait partie de l'Université d'Utrecht et qui est une spécialiste des droits fondamentaux, notamment sur la sociologie des droits de l'homme, que certains d'entre nous connaissent déjà, puisqu'on a eu le plaisir de la rencontrer via le PAI, dans lequel un certain nombre d'entre nous sont impliqués, et qui vient aujourd'hui nous présenter en fait, je pense que son travail, c'est vraiment essayer de nous expliquer la pratique, ce qu'elle exerce comme pratique concrètement au University College de Roosevelt, donc de Middelburg, et la façon dont le Liberal Arts and Sciences College fonctionne aux Pays-Bas, à travers l'expérience précise de son college, mais même au-delà de ce qui existe dans les autres colleges. Donc un très grand merci d'avance à elle. Et par ailleurs, je vous rappelle que donc, le texte de son intervention avait été envoyé il y a quelques mois. Mais donc, pour ceux qui ne l'auraient pas ou qui n'auraient reçu, je peux évidemment vous le renvoyer avec plaisir. Voilà, Barbara, je te laisse tout de suite la parole.
Donc, merci Antoine. Je vais parler en anglais. Je n'ai pas l'habitude de présenter en français, mais si vous voulez poser des questions en français, s'il vous plaît. J'ai dit que j'aimerais très bien pratiquer le français, mais je ne parlerai pas en français pendant toute la présentation parce que vous ne pourriez pas me suivre, je pense. Donc, je présenterai en anglais. It's a big honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation and also to think along on the essence of legal education, how law should be taught, what kind of law should be taught from the perspective of liberal arts and sciences in the Netherlands. And for this presentation, I thought it would be good to first say something about the rise of Dutch liberal arts and sciences colleges. It's quite a new movement in the Netherlands. And to then say something about the way in which liberal arts and sciences in the US notably have thought about the position of law in liberal tradition. To then, as a third part of this presentation, turn to the way in which we try to implement that in our own education. I had some slides which kind of give the structure of the presentation, so let me hand those out. You might have to share. Again, it's just because at some point it might be useful to have a picture of the presentation. Antoine already indicated that I'm a lawyer, I'm a political scientist. I'm the dean now of one of the liberal arts and sciences colleges in the Netherlands, the Roosevelt, which is a very small college. We only have 600 students, we have 60 teachers. So one of the great advantages of my position is that I still get to teach and I still get to do research. You know, I don't have to spend too much time on management. So that means that I'll be talking today mostly about my own experience as a teacher, not so much as a dean. Okay, liberal arts and sciences in the Netherlands. Someone once said that the rise of Dutch liberal arts and sciences colleges is really the only innovation in Dutch higher education over the past decades. The chair of the Netherlands Association of Universities. And the first Dutch liberal arts and science college, they're called university colleges in the Netherlands. The first Dutch liberal arts and science college was founded 15 years ago and had as a rationale the fact Dutch higher education at the time and a number of concerns. The first was with the enormous massification of higher education, that you have these big lecture halls full of hundreds of students, that emancipation in the 1970s, which brought more and more students to universities also meant that university education has become much more large scale, and that it's difficult to have interaction with individual students. So that was one of the concerns. Another concern was with what in Dutch we call the zesjescultuur, which means settling for a C, for a 6 out of 10, not really making the most out of your talents, but just, you know, passing by, scraping by your exams. So that was another concern at the time. Another concern was that in Dutch universities there's an enormous emphasis on doing research, overvaluing teaching and teaching as part of what someone who works at a university should do. So that was one of the concerns. And a final concern was the emphasis on monodisciplinary education, the idea that if you want to tackle the world's big problems today, that you actually need to be able to combine different disciplines in doing so. Well, it's against this background that Utrecht University, my university, founded the first university college 15 years ago. I know university college in Belgium has a very different connotation than it has in the Netherlands, because in Belgium, I understand, it's a polytechnicon. It's a university college is another word for University of Applied Sciences, whereas in the Netherlands it's very much part of an academic program, a university program. When the first Dutch University College started, University College Utrecht, there was this idea that what they intended to do would never become popular in the Netherlands, because they wanted to be selective, they wanted to draw an international audience, they wanted to put a lot of emphasis on the quality of teaching, they wanted to ask their students to really, you know, work as hard as they could. So there was quite a lot of critique and skepticism at the time, also the idea that these kind of elite colleges didn't fit into Dutch culture. But in fact, it was quite successful from the first day. There were a lot of Dutch and international students who registered. And by now we have 9 of such university colleges in the Netherlands. So virtually every big research university has a university college. Groningen, Amsterdam, Leiden, Rotterdam, Tilburg, Utrecht has 2. So you see, Groningen is actually also starting a second. So you see, a real movement of these colleges. Now, what does a university college do? What does a university college stand for? It offers a liberal arts and science bachelor education that is selective, that's international, that's very intensive, and that's residential, and that's broad in its application. So maybe to just briefly dwell on each of these 5 characteristics. The first thing is that we select our students. In Middelburg, as I said, we have 600 students. We take in about 200 students every year for this for this bachelor program, and we get about 500, 600 applications. There's others in Amsterdam and Utrecht where they get over 1,000 applications, but somehow Middelburg is well, I wouldn't say less appealing, but we get 500 to 600 applications, which is fine because selecting is a lot of work. And what we do is we interview every serious prospective student. They have to send in 2 recommendation letters, a letter of motivation, and they really have to explain why they want to study with us, that they're prepared to work very hard, that they have a broad range of interests. And on the basis of that interview, we either invite them to come or not. Sometimes interviews are held over Skype because we have students from all over the world, and some can't come to the Netherlands for an interview, so then you have a Skype discussion. But that's how we select our students. Well, once they've arrived, they receive a liberal arts and science education, which means that they can combine a wide variety of courses. So we have a law track, which I'll turn to later, but students can also do medicine or archaeology or economics or philosophy. We have 200 courses in total, and students can combine on the basis of their interests, but also have to do certain standard courses. So they all have to do 2 writing and research courses. They all have to do a methods course. They all have to take a second language. Next to our program is in English, but they have to take a second language. And even, for instance, the science students take at least 1 course in arts and humanities and 1 course in the social sciences. So we really stimulate them to take a broad perspective. So that's one feature. The other is that our teaching is very small scale, so we never have more than 25 students in a class, and every course we teach is 32-hour sessions, which is very different from, for instance, Amsterdam, where I teach before, where I'd have 7 sessions for a course with, say, 400 students in a lecture hall, and now for that same course I have 30 sessions with 25 students. So you can imagine you can do much more. You can know your students in the second week. You can know their interests, so you can also tailor your program to their interests. And one of the things that we very much emphasize is interactive teaching and permanent assessment. So we don't have this classic idea of, at the end of the road, you know, learning 3 books by heart and doing an exam on the book, but an essay in week 2 and a presentation in week 4 and an exam in week 6. But this permanent assessment, which is nice because as a teacher it also allows you to give feedback and to see what students do with your feedback, you know, because, well, maybe you give certain comments on the first essay, and then the second essay you either see that they've incorporated it or not, and then you can say, well, hey, you know, I told you last time that you were supposed to, I don't know, enter a research question. So this interactive teaching is very much part of our system. We don't have resits, for instance, so students aren't allowed to do an exam at the end twice. Yeah, the idea is that their mark is made out of all these small elements. So that's one element of the program, this intensive teaching. Another element is that it's residential, so students who move to Middelburg. I don't know, have you ever been to Middelburg? Oh, you should come visit. We should have had it on location, this seminar. We're based in the former town hall, which is a fantastic Gothic building, and students have they live in 4 campus locations around the town hall, which is nice because they also get to learn from each other outside of the classrooms. And if you live together with someone from Nepal and someone from Colombia and someone from I don't know, Sweden, you also learn from that interaction. So that's the university colleges, ours and university colleges in general. It's gained a lot of attention in the Netherlands also because of the study success. So out of the students, we admit 93% graduates in 3 years, which partially has to do with the selection, but I think partially also with this more schoolish system. And our graduates generally end up in very good programs. So the majority goes abroad. They go to Oxford or Cambridge or LSE, and then they do exceptionally well there as well. We see from our alumni survey and those of other colleges. So we have an enormous amount also of national interest in what's happening in the colleges and how this can be replicated also in other settings. So that's as an introduction before I turn to law and before I turn to our own program, something about university colleges in the Netherlands. Maybe it is good if, at this point, if you have questions about this system that we discuss them now, or?
Maybe, sorry, just
yes?
one question. I didn't get if So the students are not specialized at this point?
No, so it's a bachelor program. Well, they combine different specializations.
Okay.
So, but if they do, for instance, our track in physics, they'll go directly into a physics master program. If they do a track in I don't know, political science, they'll go to a political science master program. So they do acquire the basis needed for a disciplinary master program, but they combine that with other courses. So they specialize in more things, and they do that by working very hard and in the intensity of the program. I'll say something about the law later because that's a bit of a different story.
I have a question about the professor. Are they specialized professor in teaching, or are they also doing research? Because you said you were more in research, so are you, I don't know, having this kind of college to have this for the purpose of having specialized teaching program, or is it the same type of professor than in normal university?
Yeah, well, we always say we're a teaching college, so everybody who comes to work for us and with us has to love teaching. And for instance, even we were talking about big research grants over lunch. Even people who have a research grant are still expected to teach at least 3 courses a year. So we don't allow professors to get out of teaching, and we very much also have the idea that professors really have to teach the first year, second year lectures, which is quite different from how it is in the rest of the Netherlands. So our teachers and our professors, it's an interesting combination. Partially we have people, even pensioned professors, who are kind of fed up with the big university system. So for many years we had someone in the field of theatre studies, Henry Schoenmaker, who lives in Rome, and he'd fly over to Amsterdam on Tuesday evening and then take the train to Middelburg, teach with us all Wednesday and then fly back to Rome. And he's a very well-known professor in the Netherlands, but he said, well, you know, this is like the new Bauhaus, I want to be a part of this. So we have some of, and our I think medicine professor is also someone out of that category. I'd say our people, a few years after their PhD, they're also very much people who like the balance between teaching and research in a context in the Netherlands where the emphasis is very strongly on research. So all our academics do research, but we don't say, oh, you have to publish, you know, at least 4 publications a year in peer-reviewed journals, etc. So there, of course, people are academics and they want to do research, but we are more lenient than what you'd find in a big faculty. So yeah.
So you combine both activities because you carry out research with your students.
Yes, yeah. That's very much something that we've been pioneering and find very important. The whole idea of undergraduate research, so doing original research together with bachelor students. To just which is possible and actually works very well and is interesting. So we have a number of things we specialize in. One is this idea of teaching excellence. So we also have, together with Harvard, we have a training program for university teachers. So that's something we work on. Undergraduate research as a point of attention also in the Netherlands. In the US, you really have funding programs for undergraduate research where professors are paid to do research together with bachelor students, and you can get funding for that kind of projects. And we're trying to start that up in the Netherlands. And then another thing we very much emphasize is global citizenship. I'll get to that later. So. Okay, so this is, yeah?
Just a point. From the point of view of student, if you are a student within a liberal arts and students college, are you also supposed to take part in courses at, so to speak, normal universities, or are teaching programs at liberal arts and sciences colleges full independent? from the university system?
Well, of course, we're part of a normal university, of Utrecht University. So in that sense, for instance, our students get a diploma from us and a diploma from Utrecht University. We in Middelburg are a bit different from the other university colleges because we're not physically located next to the mother university. So in Utrecht and in Rotterdam, students can take courses at the big university. And with us, because we're physically at a distance from the mother university, generally throughout the semester they just take our courses. Nearly all our students go on exchange for half a year. So out of those 3 years, half a year they spend in America or in Hong Kong or South Africa or wherever. And they often do summer courses abroad. So that's how they take extra courses where they want to. But so that's our system. But the other university colleges, you do have students taking courses elsewhere. But what's really fundamental to this whole idea of university college is also having a community, you know, and really being an academic community and seeing each other the whole day, being able to walk into your teacher's office and having lunch together. So there, the core is very much what happens in the college. Okay, well, as said, for the Netherlands, it's really new, this university colleges, you know, and it's interesting because people who visit our open day, parents haven't known this system, you know, so their children say, well, I want to go to university college, and parents are like, so what is this? But of course, the whole idea of liberal arts and sciences has much deeper roots and much longer roots. I just want to say something about that, also in relationship with discussions on teaching law, to slowly move there. Well, actually, have you been able to read this article? Because then when Antoine said it was sent around a few months ago, I thought, well, maybe it's not. Well, because there I do trace the whole tradition of a liberal education back to Aristotle, back to Socrates, back to the Greek thinkers who felt that it was important for intellectuals to open the mind and to have the artes liberales, to have a liberal approach to well, whatever issue at stake, and to combine perspectives in thinking about the big issues of the world. So Aristotle was one of the first thinkers to argue in favor of a liberal education. And this whole tradition of the artes liberales was very much taken forward also by Latin thinkers in setting out these 7 artes liberales, which together every educated person should have. So this liberal arts tradition has a very long, a very deep roots, which in a way in Europe in the 19th century were replaced by the emphasis on monodisciplinary education and on research-based education, but which did take roots in America in the 17th century. So in America, right from the start of university education in the United States, you've had liberal arts and sciences colleges, Harvard College, William and Mary, the oldest universities in America are liberal arts and sciences colleges, where students in the first cycle of their graduate education, well, in their undergraduate education, as we'd say now, get different disciplines and learn about different disciplines, to only later work towards a specific vocation. And you still see this in America, that I think that there's 600 liberal arts and sciences colleges in the US, and there the idea is you start by going to college, you take a wide variety of courses that interest you, and then after your college education you go to law school or to med school or to a specific vocational program. And I quoted Jonathan Becker of Bard College in this paper because I think he has a good description of where liberal education is in the US today. Let me find it back. No, here I'm still with the Netherlands. Yeah. Here. So Bard College's vice president says liberal arts and sciences education in the US today is about a system of higher education designed to foster in students the desire and the capacity to learn, think critically, and to communicate proficiently, and to prepare them to function as engaged citizens. This is very important, engaged citizens, we'll turn to that. It is distinguished by a flexible curriculum that demands breadth as well as depth of study, encourages interdisciplinarity, and enables student choice. It's realized through a student-centered pedagogy that is interactive and requires students to engage directly with text in and outside of the classroom. So this is very much, I think, the common denominator between all those hundreds of liberal arts colleges in the US that have, as I said, been there for centuries. Now, turning to law as a field has always had a kind of ambiguous relationship with the liberal arts because on the one hand, law could be considered a vocation, a technical expertise that you need to practice law, and in that sense, much legal education in America has been master education, has been graduate education. At the same time, if you see these colleges as preparing students to be engaged citizens, then law, of course, is crucial to understanding how society works, to forming engaged citizens. So what you see in the American liberal arts programs is that generally there are legal courses, but that they're very much in the field of law and society, and law and society studies, critical legal studies, quite a few courses in the field of law and literature, but that there's, in American liberal arts and science education, very little technical legal training as such, or attention for positive law, as we'd call it. At the same time, what you do see in the US is that even the law schools and the law programs say, oh, actually we should allow for more interdisciplinarity, we should do more of what the liberal arts colleges are doing. So if you look at the liberal arts and sciences colleges, after which we were modeled in a way as an example, law has a place in growing critical citizens, strengthening citizenship, but there's very little legal training. Now, of course, in the Netherlands, with our liberal arts and science college, we have a slightly different context because we do want to enable our students to, after they've graduated from our program, to enter an LLM program and to become practicing lawyers. So in that sense, we have the challenge of, on the one hand, teaching our students enough about the law, and both international and European law, but also the law in given domestic contexts, whilst at the same time having this essential character of liberal arts and sciences, which is about opening the mind. So this is the struggle, our perpetual struggle, if you wish. And as a third part to what I want to say today, I just wanted to show you how we've tried to solve that and how we do that in our context in Middelburg. And there it's maybe good to first distinguish a number of key features of the liberal arts tradition as it's developed over the centuries in the US, and to show how we try to incorporate them in our education. The key features, I've put them on the fourth slide. I think one very important element in liberal education is critical thinking, to really stimulate students to come to their own conclusion, to question givens, to think outside of the box. In the paper I tell how always in my introduction to law I draw a box on the whiteboard and I say, okay, well, this is the box, and lawyers in a way very much function and reason from within a box. But I do also want you to look at the box from a distance, and also maybe to question whether there should be a box at all, or whether it should be a different kind of container. So this critical thinking about the law, the place of the law, I think is crucial in liberal arts and sciences. Another thing is the acquiring knowledge through research. At our college we're reading a book together now called Teaching Through Research and Research Through Teaching, which is all about how doing research is such a crucial tool in teaching, and how if you do your own research on a topic, you acquire a much better and different understanding of that topic than if you really get spoon-fed what comes out of research. So Antoine already mentioned how we do a lot of undergraduate research, and I'll say something about that later. Another key element of a liberal arts tradition is this interdisciplinarity, so also looking at law from sociology, from psychology, from economics, philosophy, of course, incorporating these perspectives in law. A fifth element that you see in also all the writing from the US on what law in the liberal arts should be about is an emphasis on stories and on the narrative imagination. I really find it interesting, Professor Ost's emphasis on law and literature, because of course law is so much about stories and about people's stories, and about and being a good lawyer is so much about being able to understand and retell these stories. So getting at the law via stories and generally strengthening the narrative imagination as a way to also engender empathy is a key feature, I think, of all liberal arts programs. The final element that was already given in the definition is the idea of what's the purpose of an education? Knowledge for what? Is it a knowledge for knowledge itself? Is it knowledge to make a lot of money later on, to become, an economic actor? Or is there another purpose? And many liberal arts colleges in different varieties say, well, our essential purpose is also to educate citizens of the world, and critical citizens of the world, of course, not to educate towards a certain ideology, but to educate public intellectuals that want to engage with the big debates of our time and have the skills and the capacity to do so. So I think if you look at the liberal tradition, these 5 elements come to the fore over and over as being important elements in also thinking about law in the liberal tradition. Maybe it's good, before I turn to our college and our programs and how we try to incorporate them, to ask if there's any questions or thoughts on this liberal tradition as a whole. All clear? Very curious to do how we see how we do it in the Netherlands. Well, and this is the reason why I thought it might be good to have these slides here. So you can imagine we have 200 different courses, and students do 4 courses a semester in parallel, 24 courses in total, and one of the tracks they can do is a law track, and students who've done the law track would often go on to LLM programs and to become practicing lawyers later on, or not, to different professions. Now, what does this law track look like? There's an introduction with the enormous name of Law, Society and Justice, so you can imagine how difficult it is to decide what to put into those 30 sessions, and that 30 sessions is very little then. There's international law, there's crime and law enforcement, principles of private law, there's a course on international human rights, there's a specific course on law and healthcare, There's a course that kind of changes per semester, and then students get to do individual research projects. They can do honors theses, and they can do academic internships, for instance, with law firms or with the court in Middelburg. So that's the structure of our law track. At the moment, if students, students having done this in combination with other courses, can enter a variety of legal master programs in the Netherlands. But if they want to become a practicing lawyer in Dutch law, they still do an extra year of Dutch law. So there's a pre-master in Dutch law. And at the moment we're negotiating with the law faculties and the bar to have that changed, but that's not changed yet. If they go abroad to the UK, US, they do go directly to law school. So we have graduates who went to law school and who are now practicing in the UK or in the United States. So this is the structure. Now, how to teach law in such a liberal arts context? And this is what I set out in the article, I've come to think of my role as a teacher in such a context as being all about orchestrating encounters and organizing meetings between students and writers, students and different stories, different schools of thought, but also real physical encounters between students and practicing lawyers, people affected by the law, etc. And I think general ways of doing that is, on the one hand, by doing a lot of simulated encounters in the class. So we do a lot of role plays. I start the article with an example from a transitional justice course that I taught a few years ago, which I'm not sure if I'd repeat that experiment, because what we did, we were talking about truth commissions and the whole theme of transitional justice, how best to deal with the legacy of mass human rights violations. And I'd said to students, well, why don't you, in Truth Commission reports from South Africa, from Guatemala, from Sierra Leone, from Argentina, why don't you look up one story of one person that somehow is close to you or not, and then next week we're going to play out a debate on the value of truth commissions, but you're going to play the role of that person. So anyway, there we were in the class, and one student said, well, I'm so-and-so from Guatemala. I saw my brother's child being smashed against a rock because was like a really, and this girl started crying as she told the story, and then the girl next to her also started crying, and it was like, oh. So at some point I said, well, maybe we should, take a bit more distance from the topic. And have the discussion that way, but it did show that looking into the story of one person and engaging with that one person leads to a totally different discussion than if you have an abstract discussion of tribunals versus truth commissions. What are the advantages of both? So role plays is a way, I think, of getting to what the law is and does. Of course, we do a lot of moot courts. In the first year, it's really kind of scripted moot courts where everybody has a role and it's kind of written out. And later on, it's much more a legal issue where students really delve into the law itself and take on different roles. A lot of debating also debating in class. Another thing is that we really try to send our students out into the world. So we always go to many different places, which is possible still with a class of 25. But one of the things I always do in the introduction is also to kind of send students on a fox hunt. So I tell them, okay, you must go to the court of Middelburg and just observe a case and write a report on that. And interview a lawyer, and now we have a list of lawyers who are okay with being interviewed, to really, also show them the variety of law and the people behind it. So those are encounters that we organize. It very much differs per course. So I did a course on international human rights also 2-3 years ago, where we focused on undocumented migrants. And there, I also described this in the paper, the students interviewed people who were undocumented in Middelburg. Now Middelburg is like a very, well, you know, a very nice provincial town where you don't expect people to be living out in the street. And this was already a few years ago as compared to now. But there in the park in Middelburg, you know, they were sitting on the grass interviewing refugees from Iraq who were basically in and out of alien detention, and also told that they didn't have a lawyer, or if they'd phoned their lawyer, she wouldn't pick up the phone, and what life is like from that perspective. So I think that really made an impression. I must say, Moritz Baumgartner, who you know, and you know, who's now doing a PhD at ULB, he said to me last year, he said, yeah, in our first year you made us interview an undocumented migrant, and this was, you know, quite shocking for me, really. So there is, of course, a risk in organizing these kind of encounters, but it also, I think also shows the essence of what law is about and should be about. So there's this element, and also at a general level, there we're not scared of stimulating our students to be engaged. And engaged doesn't mean taking in a progressive position or a conservative position, but at least, you know, engaging with the big themes in society. So now they're very active in welcoming refugees to Middelburg. And we very much stimulate that and join them in doing so. But also if there's a student who's much more critical of how the Dutch state is handling refugees, he also gets the opportunity to organize a debate on that. But that kind of engagement with society, working together with the Refugee Council and the anti-discrimination officers, or we had a big environmental pollution issue in Zeeland a few years ago, that we very much stimulate as well, because we think that's a way to also have them practice with being engaged citizens, you know, and if they come up with findings and they present them to the municipal council and they write an article in the local newspaper, this also trains them in this capacity of public intellectuals. Okay, those are a few general observations. Let me just highlight 2 different courses, although I've already said something about each of them. The introduction, Law, Society and Justice. There again we simulate encounters, we do role plays and moot courts. I always do this semester again a constitutional debate, so where students write a constitutional essay, for instance on same-sex marriages, where they have to, on the one hand, set out the law in a given constitutional dispensation, whether it's France or a state in the US or the Netherlands or Germany. So give, like, you know, the legal side of this constitutional dilemma, but also have to give their own social legal analysis and their own normative perspective, so that they also practice with these different perspectives. And on the basis of the essays, we also do a debate in class on different issues. We organize encounters. We send them to court. We go to the International Criminal Court, to Strasbourg at times, and we also really stimulate them to engage with local society. So 2 years ago, there was a big debate on the court moving from Middelburg to Breda as part of a centralization project in the Netherlands, judicial centralization. And there were real concerns about access to justice. And there our students organized a seminar, and they invited all stakeholders, and in the end even the minister ended up coming, you know, and they created a platform to debate these kinds of issues. So that's the introduction. Just a few examples from the 300 level course. I won't go into each and every course, but maybe another one that I taught 2 years ago, I think. Very much a research course on human rights cities. We were discussing how I'm involved in a research project on cities that engage with international human rights, and I have a grant to do that, and as part of the grant I promised to look into human rights cities all over Europe. And I was actually thinking, how am I going to do this also with my other work? And then I thought, what I'll do? I'll make a course out of it, and then I'll send students to all these human rights cities, and they'll do the interviews and will engage in this topic together. And this actually worked out very nicely, because for them it was, of course, great to do original research, and there's not that much out there on these human rights cities. So they went to Barcelona and to Gothenburg and to Nantes, Nuremberg, to all these places, interviewed people for 2 weeks, and came up some with findings that I wouldn't agree with, of course, but it's their research. But they also made a book out of it, and which they put on the internet, and which is now being quoted quite a lot, because it's one of the first writings on that topic. Really, as an aside, the laziest person in that class, who really didn't do much at all, is called Van Aarsen. I can say it here because I said it to him many times. And so the quotation of the book is Van Aarsen et al. So whereas he did least for this whole research, he says, and I saw him the other day, he's now studying in The Hague, he said, sometimes I Google this book and I see how often I'm quoted. I said, but you remember who did. Anyway, so that was a project that combined this undergraduate research and also an aspect of engagement, because it also gives cities inspiration on how you can be a human rights city, and teaching students about the practice of the law. Well, there's many other examples to be given, but I think our structure was that I talked to three, and then we'd open up for the discussion. But maybe let me conclude by saying that, so in thinking about what teaching law in a liberal arts context, and maybe even about teaching law in general, and what you want to do in a legal program, I think it is about this idea of organizing encounters, that as a teacher, in a way, you're a director that confronts your students with different perspectives, with the effects of the law, with texts, old and new, and fiction and non-fiction, and scholarly and non-scholarly, to also enable them to think critically and also position themselves in debates on the law. So I think that would be my contribution to your general reflection on what law teaching should be about.
Merci beaucoup, Barbara.